Hello, BookTube. It's Tuesday, and that means Tag Tuesday. I already did an original tag I was tagged in, but I wanted to do another tag that I really liked. I wasn't tagged in it, but I saw it on An Erudite Adventure. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. Terrific channel that I just recently discovered. I discovered his channel because of Rings of Power, Amazon's The Lord of the Rings of Power. I discovered a lot of channels because a lot of true believers who really love Tolkien viewed it as their bound and duty to their channel to go through that series and review each episode. And An Erudite Adventure did. It was a little bit heartbreaking in every single one of those instances, every single one of those BookTube channels. The reviews get more and more disappointed and finally end up outright bitter because the show was so bad, especially for Tolkien fans, but even if you don't know anything about Tolkien. But by then, on An Erudite Adventures channel and a whole bunch of other channels, I'd already been hooked on just visiting these people when they make videos. So I'll leave a link to his video down below, but this video was created by Bookish Chaz. And I found his channel that way as well through this and love it. I'll leave a link to his channel as well. And this is the Book Dragon tag. It's all about dragons. The prompts are various literary dragons. Starting with number 1, Talindor, from Talindor's Guest. And the prompt is name a book with an enormous library or book collection. And for this one, and naturally all of my answers are going to be nonfiction because Nonfiction November is coming right up, and nonfiction is something I love to read anyway. And for this one, I'm going to stretch the prompt just a little to include association with an enormous library or book collection, because this is an oddity that I want to recommend. And it's going to seem odd that I would want to recommend it, but it's the New York Public Library desk reference. Big, thick, oversized hardcover with one of their famous lions on the cover. And you might think, the reason why you might think that it'd be odd that I'd recommend this is that we live in the age of your cell phone in your pocket. We live in the age of Wikipedia at your fingertips, literally at your fingertips, 24 hours a day. And that has been the death knell to big, fat desk reference works like this one. This, or the print edition of books in print, or the Chambers Biographical Dictionary, or the Visual Dictionary, the DK Visual Dictionary. Why do you need a visual dictionary of how a drive shaft works when you can call up a YouTube video and see it? Instead of seeing a really good illustration that's static, you can see it done. Same thing is true, you might think, with the New York Public Library desk reference volume. There's a lot of love that went into this. Some of those older volumes, the Chambers Biographical Dictionary, the fourth edition of the American Heritage Dictionary, some of them, of those desk reference volumes, had a lot of love and care put into them, and a lot of eloquence that you won't get on the internet equivalent thereof. And this is one of them. This is one to actually have. You will actually consult with this, even though some of the raw facts of the answers are immediately available to you elsewhere. You will still consult with this. So I wanted to put this for number 1. Then number 2 is Saphira from the Inheritance Cycle, Christopher Paolini's Inheritance Cycle. Name a book or series that involves bonding to creatures. Here I'll recommend something that I've recommended on this channel many times before. I always do it with a bit of a caution. It's an animal book, and animal books tend to have a certain gut punch at the end. You know that as well as I do. You just have to prepare yourself. The gut punch in this book is worse than in most animal books, but it is correspondingly marvelous. This is Gavin Maxwell's Ring of Bright Water, where he befriends an otter. And it's amazing. So if you haven't read Ring of Bright Water, you really should. Don't let what's coming at the end, you know it's coming, in a dog book or a cat book and a couple of other books on this list. You know it's coming. Don't let that dissuade you. It's an amazing reading and rereading experience. Then prompt number 3 is Drogon from Song of Ice and Fire. Name a book or series where one of the characters is virtually unstoppable. Here I picked Robert Caro's volume on Lyndon Johnson's time as President of the Senate, as the most powerful man in the U.S. Senate. It's the biggest Johnson volume. It's the volume right. You know, he's not president yet here. He's just, he wields enormous power with his gavel in Washington, D.C., to the extent that when the Kennedy team approached him to be vice president on the ticket, a lot of Johnson's friends wondered, why would you give up that much power? The power that you had for the empty ceremony of the vice president's office. That was when Johnson gave his infamous quote, about how many presidents have died in office and how he's a gambling man. Little guessing that his president would die in office. This is before then. And this is the most detailed, the most passionate, and I believe the most loving of Caro's books. I think the mechanisms of the Senate and also the parade of personalities, I think it appealed to him as a writer more than the subject in any of his other books on Johnson. So this gets the Drogon affair. Then prompt number 4 is Balerion the Black Dread from Fire and Blood. Name a book or series that has gigantic beasts. We can go to an old National Book Award winner, but a very good book. This is George Small's book, The Blue Whale. Pretty sure this is not in print anymore, but it's about the biggest animal that has ever lived on Earth, the blue whale. It's a lot about, I mean, this was from a long time ago, a generation ago, so it's a lot of this is about hunting blue whales, the degradation of blue whale populations, the degradation of their environment. There's a lot of great natural history in this thing, too. It is still very much worth a read. Then we move on to prompt number 5, which is Smaug from the Hobbit. Glorung is not mentioned in the Book of Dragon tag, nor is An the Black. It's just Smaug, who I realize cuts a forbidding figure in The Hobbit, but he's a minor dragon. But anyway, name a book or series that involves talking animals or beasts. Here I have a book by Irene Pepperberg. Again, it's an animal book, so you know what's coming. Don't hold that against the book. Just get your hankies ready. That's all. But this is Alex and Me. Her book about the African gray parrot Alex, who she taught a staggering vocabulary of English words. And the standard response to parrots or cockatoos or whatever who learn English words is that they don't know what they're saying. They might know the words. They might even have a rudimentary grasp of when the words are called for in terms of time of day or who's talking, but they don't know what they're saying. And I swear, when you are done with this book, you might think that in most cases, even Coco, the gorilla, but you definitely won't think it with Alex. You won't be able to finish this book without believing that he understood what he was saying, that he understood what the words meant. Which, when you think about it, I mean, he had a tiny little brain. It just fits inside that head. But when you think about it, the association necessary to learn these words, including in a vocal apparatus that doesn't have lips or cheek muscles, the cognitive complexity necessary to learn those things and their occasions and time of day or who you're talking to, is that really far off from figuring out what the words mean? I mean, if you know what a word sounds like, who to say it to and when and why you're saying it, don't you know what the word means? I don't know. Those are the kinds of questions that you'll ask when you read this book. It's utterly fascinating. Then we move on to number 6, Falkor from the Neverending Story. Name a book or series where one of the characters is extremely lucky. Here I have a kind of macabre definition of luck, but I consider it to be so, and that is the small group of people who survived the atomic bomb attack on Hiroshima and then the atomic bomb attack on Nagasaki. The Japanese call them Hirokusha. And that's what this book is by Gaimor Sekimori. And it's about those people. It's about the Hirokusha. It's about that small group of people who survived both atomic explosions. It's a gruesome experience at times. It's a gruesome story. But I have to consider that surviving is better than dying. That's the through line that I'm working with this book. And I don't think it gets luckier than that. Then we'll move on to prompt number 7, which is Borch from The Witcher. Name a book or series with shape-shifting creatures. Here we'll go to, I've got a garish modern cover, but here we'll go to an older book, a much older book, definitive in its way. This is by Sabine Baring-Gould, and it is the Book of Werewolves. It's nonfiction. It's his study about where and how werewolves appear in world literature. Every instance that he can think of, everything that bears on their folklore or whatever, all of that, anything that he can find, it's all in here. It is compendious reading. Maybe not a page turner, unless you are interested in werewolves. As I imagine there are a million more people interested in werewolves now than there were before Disney Plus showed Werewolf by Night. If you have not seen Werewolf by Night on Disney Plus, you are missing something. You are really, really going to enjoy. What a show. What a show. If you had asked me last year, will Disney Marvel ever produce anything worth watching, I'd have said probably not. But they produced this, and it is not only worth watching, it's fantastic. I imagine a lot of people watching that are going to be thinking, well, first I want to know about Marvel's version, Marvel's character, Werewolf by Night. But I also want to know about werewolves. Well, any werewolf inquiry, nonfiction-wise, is going to start with this book. If you are interested in the folklore of werewolves, you're never going to find a better compendium than this. Then we can move on to prompt number 8, which is Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. Name a book or series where someone must train or tame animals. And here I will, this is sort of tongue-in-cheek, although it is an enjoyable book to read if you can find a copy. This is by Barbara Woodhouse, and it is No Bad Dogs, The Woodhouse Way. This is her book of dog training. I have mentioned many times on this channel that there's only ever been in the history of humankind one person who is actually qualified to write a book about dogs, and you're listening to him, and he's never done it. Barbara Woodhouse most certainly is not that person, but she has a very brisk kind of Julia Child-esque air about her when she's writing in this book about taking your dog for walkies and what you're doing right and wrong with dogs. As with most dog training books, a large part of this is training the humans, and it is memorable. It will get you thinking. If you have dog training advice, you are advised to email me rather than to buy this book and read it, but definitely counts as training or taming animals. Then we move on to prompt number 9, which is Hungarian Horntail from Harry Potter. Name a book or series that involves a competition. Not getting far away from dogs here, we can stick with a classic, an absolute classic. Gary Paulson's book, Winter Dance, which is a nonfiction work of his about the Iditarod, this enormous dog sled race through the wilds of Alaska in the middle of winter, where it's a competition and the dogs do have to be trained. The dogs very much enjoy it, or I wouldn't be championing it. They very much like doing it. They like pleasing their human, and they like working in tandem with each other once they learn how to do that. It's not involuntary servitude on their part. It's not like, for instance, in Saudi Arabia and in the Middle East, even today, there are massively well-attended camel races that are torture for the camels. They are tortured to get into it. They're tortured to get up for it. They're tortured to get to race, just to run themselves and to stay to the course. And they're tortured, killed, and eaten if they fail too often. It's not like that. The dogs in the Iditarod are enthusiastic participants. They are extremely well cared for. I've met many of these teams. I don't, as I always say when I mention the Iditarod, I don't know what future it has. We are going to live very soon. We are all going to see a year in Alaska where there is no snow. So there's nothing, where the Iditarod isn't possible anymore. But for now, it will always live in the pages of this book, which I cannot recommend strongly enough. It's just an amazing book. Then we move on to Errol. Prompt number 10 is Errol from Guards by Terry Pratchett. Name a book or series with presumed misfits. Here I want to recommend very strongly a more recent release. One of those releases that I always talk about on this channel, where you read something and you like it, and in my case, maybe review it, talk it up, but you don't realize how much you liked it. You don't realize how much it's going to stick with you until time has passed. Not every book does that. Even the great ones sometimes don't stick with you. But this one has stuck with me quite a bit, to the point where I really wish I got a finished copy and sent it away to one of you, so I don't have a copy of this book at all. This is by Francesca Wade, and it is Square Haunting. And it's the story of 5 female writers living in and around Mecklenburg Square in the 20th century, where they had cheap bohemian living quarters, where they were often at odds with their family, where they wanted to live by their pen. And this was kind of the place to try to do that. I had high hopes going into this book. It was 10 times better than I hoped it would be. I loved it. I sang its praises. And I have not stopped thinking about it as to what a wonderful... Ordinarily, I don't like keyhole histories like this, but this is an example of it done perfectly well. And I think by any even generous estimate of the word misfit, certainly it's a word that these women would have used on themselves. I think it fits them. I like how the prompt on the tag says presumed misfits, because a lot of that is a societal judgment and not anything else. Square hunting, I strongly, strongly recommend. And that's it, except for prompt number 11, which is to tag people. And I have a few people that I want to tag. I want to tag Brandy, the book eclectic, read by Fred, if this interests you at all. Shelley Swearingen, James Holder, and also a couple of newer channels that I want to tag in case. The problem with newer channels is that you don't know how enthusiastic they are about tags. They might not want to do them. Feel free to ignore it. I'll leave a link to these channels because they're wonderful. So even if they don't do the tag, you should still go and subscribe. The first one is Books with Cheryl. She's a reader. You're going to love the book she has behind her in her video. And also an aspiring writer. It's a fascinatingly no fuss, very direct, very wonderful booktube channel. And also Roy Reads Anything, who is also wonderful. Just, I'll leave a link to his channel down below. I think he does, I think he does tags, but I'd certainly love to hear their answers to these questions. But he's just, they're both just endlessly listenable. You just, the key for me, the magic of a really good booktube channel is that you're sort of pulling up a chair to talk with the person. They don't have to be making a video about your favorite book. You know, because of who they are, that you're going to want to listen to them talk about pretty much anything. And Roy Reads Anything is very much that kind of channel, so he's worth a subscription of yours anyway, because you'll be glad to see him turn up in your feed. And that's it. That is the book dragon tag, which I did all in nonfiction. You're not obliged to do the same. But I'm going to wrap this up for now for Tag Tuesday. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.